Welcome back, WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. We positively have a treat for you. We got together last month and had an ElectionPalooza that was so brilliant that Don Moeller has invited even more of our local friends. I'm going to have him introduce everybody to you momentarily. All of it brought to you by our friends at Taharka. They're serving up social change as well as some really tasty ice cream. It's low fat, I swear. No, it's delicious. It's outstanding. It's the Harka ice cream. They're our sponsor. We're gonna be talking to them about their employees and about the things they're doing here in Baltimore as well. State Fair always with us, and opening El Guapo across the street. At some point, all 8 to 10 to 12 of us will all gather over at El Guapo for quesadillas and drinks. And then we'll go down to Faidley's for some crab cakes as well. You can still ship those Faidley's crab cakes from anywhere in the world. And our friends at Moeller and Gary Realty. And now that we're into football season, I'm sure Jeff will be around here telling us how he's selling houses and watching football. Don, ElectionPalooza is your baby. I'm going to let you go with this because you have put together a cast here. I'm just hoping to be the Paul Lynde in the middle of the Hollywood squares here.
I mean, we got Hollywood squares. By the time we're done, we're going to have 20-some guests. But it is we look forward to it. It's the second of our ElectionPalooza series. We have Candace Dodson-Reed and Tom Cole of Elevate, Maryland. We've got Ryan Miner of the one and only Miner Detail, the legendary, as we like to refer to him, Mark Steiner of The Steiner Show. As Damian O'Doherty, one of our guests, the founding partners of KO Public Affairs, says he's always wanted to do a show with Mark Steiner. So, Damian, this is it. And we're waiting for our good buddy who may join us throughout, Lucinda Ware, who is the Deputy Director of Policy and Campaign for the ACLU and former National Political Director for Amy Klobuchar. My guess is that Lucinda got a little tied up, but she may be jumping in as we go along. So we are off and running. Mark, I always like to come to you first as we go on the air. It's been now a few days where, as people listen to this, we'll be about 40 days out from an election. It's been a few days since the just heartbreaking loss of Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Why don't you, as our class historian, Mark, let's start by paying homage to the justice and give us some historical perspective on Judge Ginsburg.
Well, she was extraordinary, you know, and her passing is a game changer for this election. It changes everything. Well, there are a lot of things that change everything, but this was like what tipped the balance. And, you know, she really came in here. I mean, she led the Women's Project at the ACLU, argued cases before the Supreme Court. Was this brilliant woman, and she was a centrist, but the way she pushed on voting rights and other things, she became a real force towards the end of her time on the court. But and she's just, I mean, there's this whole RBG cult around the country that everybody loves RBG, and you know, I will say that she had for me a mixed record on the Supreme Court. Some of the things she did I really didn't agree with. On the other hand, she was a giant when it came to voting rights. She may have not have spoken out as much in the beginning of her time as she did towards the end, but when she did, she really was a force and pushed hard. And, you know, I think that the biggest danger here is that when you look at the history of the Supreme Court, it's always been a very right-wing conservative institution, except for between the 1930s, I mean, and up through the 60s and early 70s, when things began to change, slowly but surely. And now, and people don't realize how important her vote was and all the justices are, with the cases coming before us. Imagine if they actually get to nominate and vote on a Supreme Court justice, and the election is up in the air, and they have to decide. That's how important this is. For all the other reasons down the line too, women's reproductive rights, voting rights, you name it. This is one of the most critical moments we could be facing. Now it's going to be down to 4 Republicans. Now Lisa Murkowski down to 3. Lisa Murkowski has said she's not going to, she will vote to wait until after the election. You need 3 more Republican votes to make this happen. If you don't have that, then the President and Senate can break the tie and they name whoever they want. And the people that think about naming are some of the most right-wing, xenophobic, insane women lawyers to take her place. It'll be like Clarence Thomas taking Thurgood Marshall's place. And I think that this is going to be I can't even overemphasize how important this moment is. 40 days out.
Well, we're gonna talk about 40 days out and the horse race, and I'm going to come back in a moment, Mark. Push back on a couple of things that you said there, but Candace, while we wait for Lucinda to even up the teams a little bit, you're the only female in the Palooza. It only seems fitting. I need a female perspective on Judge Ginsburg, because I will tell you that women in my family have wept. From young women to older women. And Damien, I'm going to have you tell your story about your lovely daughter in a moment, because you're one of us who's actually had an interaction with the judge. But Candace, talk a little bit just from a female perspective about why she rose to cult figure.
Yeah, sure. And I hope my good friend Lucinda joins me and definitely evens it out a little bit. We got to work on the balance. But you know, I mean, I think it was interesting because I posted something on Facebook yesterday. My daughter, who is a college student, wrote a very eloquent piece on what the loss of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, meant to her. And to read that from her perspective as a young woman, who I did not think was like paying attention as much as she really is, was heartbreaking. I mean, she basically said, you know, when you think of the justice, and she called her the Queen Justice, you think of someone who stands up for women's rights, particularly women's reproductive rights. And she said, as a young woman, she said, to think that choice might be something that is decided by a bunch of, her words, dudes on the Supreme Court is terrifying. And she said conservative dudes on the Supreme Court is terrifying. And she said that. She said the conversations that I'm having with my friends is specifically about that, and specifically about how much this loss means to us as it relates to being young women finding their way in America today. And it's actually called This Is America. And that was a piece of it. She goes into some more topics that are troubling, of course, in this country. But to read that from her perspective, I certainly had my feelings and my emotions. I let out an audible gasp when I was actually at a socially distanced outside barbecue thing. And I like gasped when my friend told me that's what happened. And just to think about, we say cult following. I don't think it's that. I think it's more of a woman who stood up for women's rights for years. And
water shutoffs disproportionately impact communities of color.
And what that just means, we had some interference there, but what that means to me as a woman, and then also to viewing this from my daughter's eyes, was just a moment that that's really challenging. It's really challenging. And we can talk about 40 days out, and I just read something before I came on here right before I logged in, that said the president is going to make a nomination this weekend, and it's terrifying.
No, I think that is inevitable, and we'll talk about that and its impact on the election. Before we jump to Damien O'Doherty, you know, it's interesting, Candace, you mentioned the audible gasp at your cookout. I think that happened across America. I was watching one of the cable news shows at the time, and they were on another topic, and it came across the crawler, and you could just see people pushing back tears. And then the following day, I had recorded Bill Maher, and Bill Maher was doing his show, and in the middle of his show, they held up a card for him or I guess put it on the teleprompter, that the justice had died. And the reaction among Maher's panel was just shock. I mean, it truly has been remarkable, from the thousands of people showing up at the Supreme Court, to the tributes, and to, as Mark said and what you said now, what it means. Now, Damien, not many people know that you actually dressed up as the justice one day and went into a preschool classroom and did a little tutorial on Justice Ginsburg that was actually to be followed up where your beautiful daughter, Avi, actually got to ask the justice a question. So bring us all into the loop, because you probably, I'm guessing, are the only one here who's had an actual interaction with Judge Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
I'm a member of the Maryland Bar, but I've never been so gifted as to have a chance to be before her in the court. You talked about going into my daughter's school and dressing up like RBG. Did her no justice, of course, but I think Candace can speak to this better than I can. When you have a daughter, I just can't. I can't. I was trying to find those moments that got me excited about getting into politics and or getting into public service, and so there's an example of it right there in front of you. But what really gets you into the door is the notorious B.I.G. And so, Don, you've always poked fun at me for working with elected officials that really had no sense of pop culture and really did not understand the connective gift that it is. And, to have Brooklyn RBG and Brooklyn BIG, and to have the president of the United States who has found a way to have a quarrel with just about everybody, even the president of the United States, when I was asked impromptu about her and her legacy, just had to throw up his hands in amazement. So, for me, it was seeing an Irish Catholic guy playing Irish music in Baltimore that said he wanted to lead a city. That got me really into this sort of stuff. And so I think Candace could talk a lot more about what it means when you have somebody that you can identify with, whether it's Senator Harris or Supreme Court Justice Ginsburg. What incredible power that has for people.
Yeah,
go ahead, Candace.
No, I was just going to say, to Damien's point, it's such to see someone at that level, a woman who is not afraid to say I dissent when things are not just, when things presented in front of her are not just, and to have, you mentioned Senator Harris, and to have representation at that level. I mean, I think that's such a good point to say what it means for our young daughters and what it means for me as a woman, and to know that is gone, and also to think about what the replacement may be or who the replacement may be is darn terrifying. It's terrifying, and it's just.
Well, I'm going to come
swallow.
back. We've mentioned that several times. Let's catch everybody up. We've got Ryan Miner from the Minor Detail. We've got Tom Cole and Candace Dodson-Reed from Elevate Maryland. We've got Mark Steiner from The Steiner Show, and we've got Damien O'Doherty, founding partner at KO Public Affairs, along with Nestor Aparicio and me, and a special edition of Baltimore Positive, ElectionPalooza. Ryan, you and Tom have been waiting patiently. I'm sure each of you have your own thoughts and reflections on the notorious RBG. Ryan, what are your thoughts on Justice Ginsburg?
I was in Frederick on Friday night. My wife asked me if you wanted to go for a drive, and you'll remember Friday night was beautiful. It was the perfect picturesque fall evening. So we drove up. We live in Gators, into Buckystown, and I asked my wife, "Are you hungry?" And being all 4'11", she says, "Of course I'm hungry." So we waited in we went to the Texas Roadhouse in Frederick, and we ordered our dinner, and we're waiting in the car, and I'm fiddling with my XM radio, and for some reason it didn't work. I was on the line with the XM operator, and I got this message on my phone, and I literally said, "I can't talk to you right now." And I looked over at my wife and I said, this is going to be really, really bad. Justice Ginsburg, as I wrote on Facebook, is everything that I want my daughter to aspire to become. She came, what an extraordinary life she has lived. The daughter to a Russian immigrant, grew up in the Bronx, and became she was the top of her class, and she battled so many different battles that my grandmother was born in 32 and Justice Ginsburg was born in March of 1933. And I look at these women in this era and we think these were the true OGs. These women went through so much. Justice Ginsburg paved the pathway for my daughter or Damien's daughter, all of our daughters, to rise up and say without fear, I dissent. I dissent. And her legacy will be one that is easily discussed and debated, but you look at her career in totality and her decisions, what I think defines her life is that not only was she pervasive in supporting equal rights for women, but when it came to a case for equal rights for men, she would be on the same side to support that. I think her legacy is unbelievable. It's one of the last vestiges to American decency, where a person like her and Justice Antonin Scalia could go overseas and ride an elephant together and laugh and look at one another more than just a vote, but rather a human being who has differences. And as Candace said so succinctly, that whoever replaces her will someone will fill that seat, but they will never be able to fill her shoes. And if it's any consolation, the person that the president of the United States is considering or at the top of his list, I am horrified. And honestly, I don't get scared very much, but for what this means for our country, this is terrifying.
No, I think it's right on target, Ryan. And I'm so glad that you referenced her relationship with Judge Scalia. I have full disclosure. I've tried several times over the past 10 days to write a new blog, and I'm trying to write it with a premise of we will get through this. And as John Meacham often says, our better angels will win out and we'll get past this ugliness and back to decency. And I think the decency of the relationship between Judge Scalia and Judge Ginsburg and the way they were able to go to the opera or go to Africa, that's been lost. And every time I try to write it, I'm running into writer's block and I'm having difficulty finding that optimism that I typically have. And I'm bound and determined to do it. But I thank you for referencing that. Tom, your reflections on the justice as this really has turned into a special edition of Election Palooza, where we spend the first half really paying tribute to one of the truly great Americans. And I don't know how many times we get to say that, Tom Cole, in our lifetime without it being hyperbole, but one of the truly great Americans.
Yeah, I mean, one of the best things about Supreme Court justices, particularly those we admire, is that we can just get saturated with their words and their ideas. Elected officials, they'll give a speech, but they don't need to put together a reasoned argument. And I think that is part of why the affection exists for Justice Ginsburg. I will say I wish she did not have so many opportunities to dissent. I wish that she was writing more opinions that we are living under today. I also think that we can't, and I think Candace has referenced this, I think all of us have referenced it somewhat, that we can't get past this without identifying sort of the oppressive sense of doom that comes with it, because our institutions, it was at one time that our institutions were being occupied by bad people. Now our institutions are coming apart. They are being aggressively destroyed. And I have seen a lot of people that are erstwhile supporters of that destruction that are celebrating the Scalia and Ginsburg relationship. And I love that idea for a blog post, Don, and I want to see it. But I think we also need to keep in mind that these are two people that were living in a position of relative privilege. And that if Justice Scalia had an opportunity to go to a trip to Africa with some of the people of color, women, other minorities that he was oppressing with his decisions, I don't know if that would be as romantic of a trip. So, that's where I'm coming from on this. I feel just such weight. And I feel that as a white man in a wealthy suburb. And I can't imagine, and I try to always think of those that are on the business end of these institution destruction activity.
Well, I want to jump in here and say that we all would have thought, like, what's the worst thing that could have happened with Trump, right? Like whether it was a war or a bomb or North Korea or, Iraq or Iran or any of these things that could go on around the world. I mean, a tidal wave, a fire, any of these things that could sort of really wreck America. And we weren't thinking about this frail, wonderful woman who is literally the linchpin between many, many freedoms for many, many kinds of people. And now that she's gone, I don't think we really realize that not just amongst the Eleanor Roosevelts and any other powerful woman, and, Hillary Clinton still did get 3 more million votes 4 years ago. So I'll point that out, that I guess she would have been the most powerful woman in the history of America. But now that Ruth Bader Ginsburg is gone, and I was at a mixed place where I thought there were a lot more Republicans around me at the moment than there were. I saw women sobbing. There were 10 people in my presence. 7 of them were women. 3 of them were sobbing within 5 minutes of seeing it. And I realized what she represented, that maybe there weren't enough notorious RBG shirts, and that we didn't Michael Jordan her up, to use a little sports phrase. And now that she's gone, we're going to really realize the power that she protected and the power she wielded, which I don't. And Candace, I'll throw this back to you as the female in the name a female. You talk about Oprah, you talk about anybody you want, but she's an OG, as somebody pointed out here earlier.
Yeah, no, I mean, she is, for sure. I mean, the folks who I think of in her, I mean, I can think of one person specifically, and that would be Michelle Obama, who even commands that level of.
I thought Eleanor Roosevelt, like when I just thought about the history of America,
sure.
Of somebody who made those kinds of decisions in a way, that really shaped policy. Not that Michelle Obama didn't, because I think Barack was pretty clear on what he wanted to do to begin with, right?
Sure.
Go ahead.
I think that what Michelle Obama does now for where we are right now is, the only way we get out of this is to vote, right? Like, and even that is whatever. But like, the only way we get out of this is to vote. And
go ahead, Candace.
And we can argue that for sure. But what Michelle Obama does and what her presence now is she brings a whole bunch of different kinds of people together who listen to her. I mean, I went to see her when she was on the Becoming tour. I have never seen any woman who's not an entertainer sell out the MCI Center, whatever it's called in DC now. What is it?
To talk about a book.
Whatever.
To talk about
a book. I've never. Who has done that in our history? Like, who in our recent history or even beyond? Right? Who's done that? And so the power that she brings and the message that she's saying now, which is vote and show up. She wore the necklace, right? Like, vote. I think that's the only person I can think in recent times who commands that level of respect, who could carry, and sorry to give her this amount of pressure, but can carry some weight moving forward. But she's not RBG, right? Like, she's not.
Well,
she's not sitting on the Supreme Court, right? Literally.
Correct.
You've mentioned vote several times, and I've got more than a little bit of anger looking back 4 years. And Steiner, you and I go way back. You're probably going to light me up over this. So I'm ready. Get ready to have at it, buddy. I am angrier than ever at those progressives, at those lukewarm Bernieites, at that voter after voter that said to me, I'm just not that crazy about Hillary. I want to smack them all in the face. I mean, she lost Michigan by 11,000 votes. She lost Wisconsin by a handful of votes. She lost Pennsylvania by 22,000 votes because people just didn't like Hillary. Well, guess what? Hillary would have made 3 Supreme Court justice selections. 3 selections. So this progressive, millennial, whiny, I got to get everything I want or I'm not sure I'm going to vote. they make me so damn angry, Mark Steiner, that I can't see straight. Am I right or wrong?
Trying to set me up. That's what I was trying to do here.
Well, you know, you and I go back on this, Mark. I get sick of that progressive wringing their hands. I'm not getting everything I want crap. It makes Nestor can't believe I'm saying this.
No, I hear
I'm
you.
a progressive that wants everything too, but I mean,
I
I'm not
think we
voting
need-
for Donald Trump. I'm not.
We
I'm,
need
you
to
know.
look at the votes on baby boomers, Don. I'm pretty sure he rode a white baby boomer bubble into the White House. So
And
it's
then,
not
and,
ideal
then,
too much.
and then there's those votes that Trump got that were Obama votes.
Right.
It was a huge flip.
Exactly.
But Mark,
because-
there are a couple
and-
hundred. Wait a minute. Hang on. Yes, there are. But in those states, I looked it up again right before coming on the show. There were a couple 100,000 votes in Pennsylvania, in Wisconsin, in Michigan. There were like 150,000 in Florida for the Gary Johnson, the Jill Steins. Those votes went down the toilet. And had those votes gone for Hillary Clinton, we'd have a different Supreme Court for the next 50 years.
Gary Johnson.
It's an immature approach to voting, is what I say.
Two things. I mean, Gary Johnson, first of all, is a libertarian. He would not have gotten very many of those votes. But the reality is, when you look at the last several elections, 16 million fewer people voted in the last election than voted in 2008. 2012, 8 million fewer people voted because people started getting really disillusioned. So while you can be pissed and I can be pissed, and look, I voted for Hillary Clinton, and she's not my favorite person, nor her stands on issues were not my favorites.
Because you had some common sense and some maturity.
Because
Mark,
I knew
that's
what
my
we were
point.
because I know what we're facing, and what we're facing now, and what we faced then. And I think now we're in a different place. I think that we are. You know, when these demonstrations that have taken place around the country in the last several months, I was doing a little research on it, read an article in The Atlantic, and wanted to really make sure the facts were right. The estimate is 23 million people have hit the streets in this country. And that is that's the largest number ever in the history of this country of going out in the streets. And I think that there's a different motion at the moment. And the motion now, I think, is people are looking at this like a fight to the death for the most part. Those who will not vote for Kamala Harris and Biden because Kamala Harris was part of mass incarceration because Biden is a moderate. I don't think that stuff's going to work this time. I think that people realize what we're facing. And I think we're going to see a surge in voting. My biggest fear is that if they control the courts, which they're doing, Trump isn't naming these justices. He doesn't know. He knows duck squat. I mean, he's dumb. He doesn't know anything about anything. So it's the Heritage Foundation and the right-wing legal foundations in this country that are giving him all the names of who he should appoint to the Supreme Court and to all these
the Federalist Society.
The Federalist Society, exactly. All those. That's what's doing this. That's the real danger we're facing, you know. And I don't think we're going to see that happen again. I really don't. I think there's a very different moment. I mean, and I think that look, when we were sitting on the couch last night watching a movie, and then we saw that Justice Ginsburg had passed. We were both crestfallen. Valerie, the first thing she said was, "We're going to have to hit the streets. Demonstrations in Washington, we have to be there." I mean, this is the pinnacle of the danger we're facing. I mean, I can't emphasize it. I mean, if I was a little critical of Ginsburg a little bit before, I was just playing devil's advocate. The reality is that she stood up in some fiery dissents. The reality is that her death pushes the battle even harder. We've got to stop them, and that's what her death says to all of us. That's what she before she died, she said, "Don't pick anybody till after the election, till after January." But if they do this, I mean, I think all hell could break loose in this country.
Well, they're going to do it. There's no doubt in my mind they're going to do it. I mean, others can weigh in, but they can count to 50. and they're going to get to 50, and I'll be shocked if they don't, and it is going to be Armageddon. Damian, what's the view from Colorado on all this?
The view from Colorado is when you're trying to watch your Baltimore Ravens, you got that beautiful screen and you got that amazing quarterback, and then when they cut to commercial, everything turns black, and Hickenlooper is the devil, according to the Republican Senate campaign committee, and those ads are endless, and they must be working just enough, but they're not. They don't seem to be getting them there. The U.S. Senate is something really, this community of listeners that you have, Don, people that are very plugged into the elected official conversations, even before the advent of Trump. The U.S. Senate is a place, for $500 or $1,000 in each race, you can have an enormous amount of impact on issues that are critical to you. And, if you can't stand the president, or if you want to back the president, the Senate is a place where you can engage and get a high level of engagement from the campaigns with a relatively modest investment.
Don, I want to say one sentence here. This is how scary we are at the moment when it comes to replacing Ginsburg. This is up to Collins, Grassley, Romney, and Murkowski. They all have to vote no. They all have to vote, we're putting this off, we're not taking the vote now. Those four people is who it relies on.
I agree with that, Mark.
But this is I hear you 100%. But my partner, my partner Beth Levine I'm a Democrat, affiliated as a Democrat. My partner Beth was the spokesperson for the entire United States Senate on the Gorsuch confirmation. And I'll tell you why they win is because they're not thinking about how do I get my opponent to be reasonable. They're thinking about how do I eliminate every conceivable barrier to my policy objective, and I'll do whatever it takes to get there.
Yeah.
And we don't have that. We saw that in 2000. I just read that Jeffrey Toobin book. I mean, if you want to get fired up, read that. Thank God we might have the Bushes on our team this time, but it is you got to want it more.
That's a great point, Damian. I see Ryan nodding his head. Ryan, you want to jump in on what Damian just said? They play smash ball, and we're somehow playing croquet or something, right?
Listen, I might be a cynic, and Damian, many of you guys have been doing politics a lot longer. I got involved in about 2003, and we all of us could be considered political insiders in one way or the other, either spectators or participatory media influencers in any way possible. But I have to go back to my roots, and I think many Marylanders might appreciate this. The average Western Marylander in Hagerstown right now, in Washington County and halfway, I think of my parents' next door neighbors, they have no earthly idea what a Minor Detail podcast is, or who Don Moeller is, or even the legendary Damian O'Doherty.
That really hurts, Ryan. That really hurts.
They're all Elevate fans.
If they like the Ravens, they'll know who I am. If they're Steelers fans, at least they'll hate me.
Well,
Go ahead. I'm
Steelers
sorry.
fan.
Everybody knows Mark.
And here's the thing and I remain cynical, but the enthusiasm, although it sort of changes week by week, but there's still a whole heck of a lot of people that aren't being polled, that are still out there, who are going to vote for Donald Trump. They're not paying attention. It's because the way that he makes them feel. And we could talk about the nuances of that, but it comes down not about logic, which this panel can talk about the intricacies of policy and details and historical precedents and what it means for our democratic institutions. But Donald Trump makes a certain person in Western Maryland who might be a middle-aged guy without a college education feel a certain way. And it has nothing to do with policy. It has everything to do with how he makes them feel. They don't care about anything else. I still think that there is a lot of people like that left in our country, which gives me pause to say this election could very easily be won by Donald Trump, because there's a lot of people out there who might not even express their sentiments or take to Facebook. You see it. You see the enthusiasm. You see what's going on all over our country. And I wonder, how can people possibly buy into this? When you know that either he's lying or you just don't care, how can you buy into the fact that he didn't do something with the Ukraine? But the fact is that as much logic as we can espouse on our shows and in person and in our writings, it doesn't matter to these people. They don't care because they are made to feel a certain way.
And those,
I mean, I think,
and go ahead, Candace.
I was just gonna say, so that's the real question, right? Is to what Mark said earlier, right? Does the outrage make people show up in greater numbers than we have to support Trump because, first of all, because you don't, anyway, I won't get into that, but
What?
the Trumpers, right? Like, does the outrage, because I get in trouble on these shows sometimes, I'm trying to be good.
Hey,
That's why we
Candace,
do 'em.
hold it. Let's take a deep breath. Nestor is not going to edit the tape.
Right,
So
exactly.
With that, take a deep breath and go,
I'm
Candace.
Why I
trying to
like Candace.
not get in trouble. I'm saying, but that's the real thing, right? Like, that's the tension, for lack of a better word. And so what wins? Is it the outrage, or is it we're going to go with him because he, has these great policies?
So
Yeah, I don't think it's about policies. And Tom, I want to come to you and get your take on where the race is about 40 days out. It's funny. I think it's funny. Almost at every point, someone has alluded to they went back and read something as a result of this tragic loss. I went back and I wanted to look up sort of the origin of this term culture wars. Again, we talk culture war, and I thought, let me go back and try to get a handle on when this began. And the reality is, truly is about the gag rule. I look at it and say it's a gag rule. It's I think what motivates that Trump base, that 38 to 42 or 43%, guns, abortion, and gays. I mean, that's really it. It's and God, maybe, and God.
Well, an association
and
with the flag.
race.
Don't forget the flag.
And the flag. So it's
Wait, but don't forget the elephant. You're leaving out one big factor.
I know what you're going to say.
Called race in America.
Right.
Called black people and Mexican Americans, and that's a huge
Bingo.
piece of this. That is a huge factor in this, and that's what's every time in American history when the stuff is shifted, it is shifted because of that. And so
Mark, I couldn't agree more. But here's the head scratcher, and then we're going to jump to Tom because Tom's been taking this all in, and I want to hear where he is on it. Mark, the thing that's confusing the daylights out of me, and I happened to be in a conversation the other day with former Governor O'Malley, who has the experience of not only being a mayor and a governor, but a nationwide presidential candidate, of which Damien O'Doherty was very involved and out there schlepping through the snow in Iowa trying to get the governor elected president. And I said to Governor O'Malley, I said, explain to me why the heck the Florida vote is going to hinge on Hispanics and the higher percentage of Hispanic vote that Trump apparently is going to get in Florida. And then the governor did a terrific job of talking about the Hispanic vote not being monolithic and the whole impact of the Cuban Floridian and their view of socialism and communism and how difficult it is. So I agree with you, Mark, that race is at the core of it. We talked about it last time, and Candace, you and I probably said a few things that we wish we had phrased differently. And
I was fine with what she said.
I know, but shortly after that, Nestor,
I got a job.
shortly after that, I think I have strong feelings about Trump supporters and their view on race as well. But I did like the way that someone said it a few days after our podcast on one of the social media outlets, where they said to someone, look, I'm not going to say that all Trump supporters are racist. I can't look in their hearts. But I will say this, that they've decided that his being a racist is not a deal breaker.
I think you're being
And-
much too kind, Mueller.
I think. Well, I thought it was.
That's a
nice,
bare minimum, though. That's a
bare minimum.
floor, I think.
Tom Cole, where the heck are we with 40 days to go in this race?
Yeah, well, I'm not going to do horse trading. That's not my thing. I do want to talk about some of the things that have been addressed, which is, the most dangerous thing about Donald Trump, outside of, how much power he controls, is what he does to norms and institutions. And we've been talking about race peripherally, but it is central to everything, as Mark and Candace pointed out. And I think that in terms of what he's done on race, he's been just as dangerous to institutions. My first day of law school, my first class was a constitutional law class. Our professor had us go for an hour trying to say what enforces Supreme Court decisions. They don't have a military. They don't have any control over the trust that we all have in the institution of the Supreme Court and the fact that it's written in the Constitution. So I think one of the most lasting elements of Trump, if we are so fortunate as to dump him, is that our institutions, listen to even us, listen to what Democrats are saying right now. We're saying if they break the rules, then we're going to expand the court. And we're going to get rid of the filibuster, and we're going to mess with the institutions even more.
Don't forget statehood for D.C., statehood for San Juan. We go through the whole list, right? Like defunding the police, right? We take it all the way, and then we have to march it back over the next 40 days as to what it really would mean to elect Joe Biden.
Maybe the most left-wing side of our party holds us to that, because we have to keep in mind that Democrats are as much a threat to the Constitution as are Republicans. That the Constitution is very fragile, and that our system of government is very fragile, and we may get everything we want and more from a Democratic president and Democratic Senate, but we may destroy democracy and the Constitution while we do it. So that is something, when I'm looking at what's happening, and I don't mean to be the pessimist on here, because I think this is my second time to talk, and I've been pessimistic both times. We do need to be very careful and sort of watch that and watch ourselves, because we could win so much, we lose it all.
Well, can I just say that the rubber band of this, the stretch back, is I think of that night with Obama in Chicago, right? And what that night looked like. And then 4 years later, some people who voted for Obama saying, well, he promised X and gave me Y, right? And then you say, well, it's Mitch McConnell, or it's Congress, or they wouldn't let him get anything done, or they would be up all night, right? And then the voters started to feel, well, we don't need to vote this time. He's got it. All right, well, Hillary's got this in the bag. We don't need to worry about Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. And Hillary didn't even worry about Wisconsin 4 years ago, right? So all of these things that were sort of taken for granted as to how angry the Sean Hannity, Rush Limbaugh, Donald Trump would make himself a political candidate on the back of birtherism, literally on this social media channel for the whole world to see, aided by Russian bots, right? All of that happened, and yet what happened to those people that voted for Obama in that Chicago Square, or 4 years later? Where are those people, and where will they be 6 weeks from now?
Well, we know that Democrats would much rather be talking about the public health scenarios around COVID-19. We know Republicans would rather be talking about the economy and how to rebound from this, and Trump being positioned as the person to restore the economy. But at the end of the day, we're going to have every institution, the Supreme Court, the Congress, the United States, and the presidency, all of these institutions clashing at a very momentous time.
Not to mention the police and the military. Let's bring them in. Let's not forget them. Because once Trump stands up and says, I won, they're lying, then we're all going to be looking for who's got the guns and where's the military and where's the police, and who really is going to judge this, right? Who is going to judge who won the election? I'm promising it's going to come to that, right? We can all agree with that, right?
Well, I just think that platform, may be disadvantageous for the country. We were at such a boiling point, and then to shove the whole election conversation into this court construct, I hope we don't allow ourselves all to be bogged down there, because then the conversation is just this straight R versus D corporate media conversation that we've all been chugging for the last 25 years. this thing needs to break open a little bit, and maybe this will be the tinder. Maybe this will be something that just slots us towards another 50-50 election that gets decided by a Supreme Court that doesn't have all its members.
Can I go back to something? Can I go way back, which feels like way back? The fact that we're not talking about, and I know that the great Queen Justice, as my daughter says, just passed away, but can I talk about something that's like should be a bipartisan issue? 200,000 people are dead. 200,000 people died from coronavirus thus far. We have no end to this, right? And we do have an end to it, but it's not anytime soon. There's been a failure of leadership on a global public health issue, and like people are acting like that's not a big deal. I mean, why is that not the election?
Candace,
right?
because
why
it goes
is that
back,
not the election?
Because it goes back again, and I think that's what's so frustrating for us. So for many of our listeners, not all of them, but for many, it's again because the culture wars, for a bad use of a term, trump all of that. Walking in tonight, right before I walked in, it's been confirmed that today the CDC removed from its website the advisory that COVID-19 is airborne and can be spread through the air. Now, they removed that from their website for one obvious reason, because Donald Trump doesn't like the criticism of the rallies that he's holding, and therefore, under pressure, they removed that from the website. But
I wonder what Herman Cain thinks. Oh, that's right. He doesn't think anything of that.
But how many of us, there are 7 of us on this call, how many of us speak to someone every week who believes that COVID-19 is a hoax? I know that I do. And it absolutely, to me, just makes no sense at all. Ryan,
well, let me say this. I was in the airports, with the Ravens. I flew for the first time in 7 months, and I saw a woman wearing a Trump mask. And I thought to myself, I wonder what she believes about how that mask got around her face. And it's clearly the China virus or whatever he's going to call it. I mean, it's the Democratic hoax, whatever it is, that if you are wearing a mask that says Trump on it and you don't know how the mask got on your face to begin with, and there's someone to blame like Hillary or Obama or Biden or whoever it is, that belief doesn't even pertain to Candace's point, to how Uncle John died. Uncle John died because of the Chinese and because of the Democrats, right? Like they don't even associate it with any of the actions that have been taken or lack of actions. In the case of Jared Kushner, the words that he used about RPPP, all of that type of stuff that the states are going to be on it. Larry Hogan calling South Korea to get PPP. All that went on is lost on these folks because Hannity says it's China's fault. And go vote for Don.
Nestor, I was in it. I won't mention the restaurant, but I was in a restaurant in your old stomping grounds of Dundalk a week or 2 ago, having breakfast. And while having breakfast, someone walked in, very loudly said to a couple of his buddies who were having breakfast, "Hey, you guys feeling safe about having breakfast? Aren't you worried about that there virus?" And what a bunch of crap. Basically, just there is no virus. It's a hoax. Can you believe we're having to put up with all this? And those of us on social media, you see these people talking about it all the time. Ryan, you spoke eloquently last time about the pain that it's caused your families. I thought of you, Ryan. So the other night I watched, I don't know if any of you have seen it or our listeners, there's a wonderful movie. It's almost like an intimate Broadway play on HBO called Coastal Elites. Yeah. And it's basically 5 or 6 short stories of people interacting, trying to make sense of Trump world. And one of them is the wonderful actress Sarah Paulson, who goes to a family dinner with her brothers and sisters and parents who are all in MAGA hats, and the pain that it caused her. And I thought of you right away, Ryan, and how painful that description was. And coming from Western Maryland, how challenging this has been for you.
Yeah, it is challenging. And at our last podcast in August, I told, I just revealed that I hadn't talked to my dad since the end of April because over his anti-Fauci posts on Facebook and me calling it out, and still haven't talked to my dad, and it is painful. And I want to bring up this point about the debates. I think by the next podcast that we do, we'll have at least one debate under our belts, maybe two. I think the vice presidential debate is October 7th.
I think that's right.
Okay. So my question to everyone was, why is Joe Biden, why is he even debating this guy? And I know that it might not be politically opportune, and they might say running scared or Joe in the basement, but honestly, what are we going to get out of this other than getting angry? I'm going to watch this. He's going to lie. That not Biden, but Trump, he's going to lie. It's going to be bluster. It's going to be nonsensical. What would be the harm in Biden saying, you know what, Mr. President, I'm just not going to do it. I'm not going to buy into it. Would that be politically devastating for him?
What do you think, Damian? You're our political wizard.
I think
What
Mark
advice
Mel.
would you
I think
give him?
I think Mark Mellman, the pollster, the Democratic pollster, put it best the other day. He said something to the effect that, Hillary won all her debates. Obama lost a few of his. At the end of the day, these things statistically don't shake the tree as much as we would all like to think. And, expectations are low for Joe Biden, which has been playing into his campaign strategy the whole time. So I would not fear that. I think that Americans, I empathize with the struggle that Ryan's having, but I think people view that as sort of the American gladiatorial sport of the U.S. presidency. And if you can't post for that, you may give your opponent more room to criticize you.
Well, let me throw this to Candace and Mark, because Michelle Obama would say, when they go low, we go high, right? And that's the way I've lived my life. I've known Don 38 years. It's the way we've lived our lives. We've all been hit low. You can't go lower. But Donald Trump has made a life of doing that, to set an evening aside for this. And Mark and Candace, I know you haven't been involved in a little bit of this. I just think that is something our parents, good people's parents, taught us. We don't go down in the mud with people. But, when you're going to be in a room with Donald Trump, pigs are going to be involved.
Candace, why don't you go first? Go ahead.
Yeah, sure, I'll go first. And she did clarify that at the convention, right? She said, don't go low, but she was like, get with them a little bit.
Don't hit them low, hit them late.
Right. She's like, let me clarify that a bit. And she did. I agree. That's the way I was raised, is to not go low, and you don't roll around with the pigs in the mud. I do think, in my opinion, you put the facts out there. I don't think the debates move anyone. I kind of agree with Ryan. I'm like, no one's getting moved from the debates, right? Like, know who I'm voting for right now. Most people who are experiencing the rage that Mark was talking about before know who they're voting for right now. Is anyone really getting moved with these debates? I'm not sure. Does it help Biden or Harris to go low and get down in the mud? No, in my opinion. No, not at all. And I don't think they should.
Mark, what are your thoughts?
Well, I don't go low. I agree, but you got to fight.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And how do you do that when people don't accept facts?
And not be afraid to fight. We're in a battle. We're in a war, and for the future, for our children, for this country, for the world. So it's not a minor thing. The point of the debates. Even if the debates don't move anybody, if Biden was to say, I'm not debating, it would hurt his campaign. It would be used against him. It would really hurt him, because it would be, he's not debating because he's too addled. He can't handle it. He can't stand up to Trump. So no matter what happens in the debate, he's got to debate. There's no choice. There's no political choice but to debate. And I think American people come to expect it. he's got to do it. He's just got to be prepared and ready. And I think that Kamala Harris will destroy Pence.
Yeah.
I mean, but then it'll give the racist fodder even more. Angry black woman.
Angry black woman.
Angry black woman. Well, listen, we are.
She's so aggressive.
Yes, she's
too aggressive.
It's too aggressive. Yes, yes.
Too aggressive. For those of you listening, driving around in your cars, tuning in, we are with Ryan Miner of Miner Detail, Tom Colwin, Candace Reed of Elevate Maryland, the legendary Mark Steiner of the Steiner Show, founding partner of KO Public Affairs, Damian O'Doherty. I know Tom said he doesn't like to play pundit, but as we come to the end of an hour, I think we do owe our listeners a sense of where we see the race. I'll start now, and then we'll sort of come around. Because I'm a nerd, I play with the Electoral College that I hate with every fiber of my being every couple of days. I have the race at 284 Biden, 254 Trump. I think there really are only two states that matter at this point from where I sit. That's Pennsylvania and Florida. I would suggest that early, and I think we will have a winner in Florida on election night. And if by chance Biden wins Florida, I think we can all pop the bubbly. I don't think there's one scenario that allows Donald Trump to win the presidency without Florida. But I do think Pennsylvania is still very much in play. I also would encourage our listeners to pay attention to two congressional districts, the 2nd Congressional District in Maine and the 2nd Congressional District in Nebraska. Those two states award electoral votes by congressional district. Trump won both of those districts in 2016, and right now Biden is leading in both of those districts. Those two electoral votes in those two congressional districts may make a difference. So we're going to be back in about a month, but at this point, with about 40 days to go, the Real Clear Politics average has not budged. We can talk about that stability. I looked right before we went on the air. It's 6.5. It's been 6.5. The NBC Wall Street Journal poll shows, Candace, to your point, no uncommitted voters, basically. It now comes down to simply who votes. And I do want to make one point before we jump around to the others, and that is I got off the phone, and Damian, I know you guys are doing some work with the Maryland Board of Elections. There's one clarification, and I think all this chaos has been designed by the president. He knew exactly what he was doing, down to the Postal Service sending people postcards all across the nation with the wrong voter information on it. I mean, that was one of the most blatant examples of voter suppression that I've ever seen that took place last week. But I think people are under the misunderstanding that Nestor and I, like many of you, have requested absentee ballots. Nestor actually did it live on one of our podcasts. Once you have requested that absentee ballot, you are not allowed to vote on a regular ballot on election day. If you show up on election day or in an early vote center and say, I've changed my mind, I feel better if I vote in person, you will have to fill out
By the way,
another
Don, I don't want to interrupt you, but I want to
Yeah.
get the screen here. I got it in the mail. So this is
There
my
you
stuff
go.
right there. So just so you see it, okay? So literally on my desk.
So you got your application. So the bottom line is that if you've requested the absentee ballot, you need to fill out that absentee ballot, or else you're going to have to fill out an application for a provisional ballot, and then your ballot will not be counted on election day. It will be counted post-election.
In other words,
So
they're making it hard for us to vote.
This is all about the voter suppression that Donald Trump tried to do, and the more he talks about how the election and voting by mail is dangerous, the more people are going to think, oh, maybe I should go in person, and then they'll find out they can't vote that day. It's reprehensible. So my message to those of you who got an absentee ballot that will be coming in the mail, fill it out that day, take it to a drop box or to the post office that day. Don't let it sit on your desk. Get it in, and let's have voter turnout like we've never seen. Ryan, we're going to jump around in order here. Where's the election with 40 days to go?
So I want to share one positive thought, a negative thought, and an incredulous thought. The positive thought is that even though in Justice Ginsburg's passing, as we all stated so well, that her life is a testament to the unbelievable. And I'm really happy that my daughter, who's 13, can see that. That's it's remarkable, and I'm so proud that she texted me the other night and said how grateful she was for Justice Ginsburg. 13 years old. That's just incredible. One negative thought that I'll share is that Lindsey Graham is the single most depraved human being ever to live, ever to maybe be in South Carolina, or at least be elected to the United States Senate. And I have no respect for him. John McCain would be disappointed, I think, and that's gratuitous. And one incredulous thought is, why is Governor Larry Hogan endorsing Susan Collins? What does he get out of that? And why is he straddling this fence of, oh gosh, golly gee, I don't know, I could vote for Trump or vote for Biden. Hogan needs to either get off the sidelines or stop playing the game of national politics. I'm sick of it, okay? I'm done with this. Either stop straddling the moderate fence. He's never going to be elected president. Knock it off, Governor.
Well, Ryan, we'll come back one day and talk about the test he bought from Korea that really didn't work and cost taxpayers $2 million. But, Ryan, before we go to Candace, I'm not going to let you off the hook. 40 days to go. Tell us who wins the election. You can come back and change next time, but we got 40 days out. Who wins?
If it were held today?
Yes.
Biden.
Okay. Candace, coming to you. Give us some election
I hate this question. I don't like to do this because I'm kind of a nervous Nelly. Y'all don't know me that well, but Tom knows I'm a nervous Nelly. And I don't like to make predictions, especially 40 days out, because I think a lot of things can happen in 40 days. I'm going Biden if it were today, but I'm not sure.
Okay. Tom Cole.
Yeah, so I'm collecting votes with all of my friends on this election. I despite my pessimism, I feel good about where Biden is. And actually, today I got a delivery of postcards that I'm going to be sending to voters in Pennsylvania. So
there you go.
I back up my bets whenever I can.
Handwritten, I hope.
Mark
Hi, I'm
Steiner.
Tom. I'm texting you on behalf of Team Biden. I get those all day, right?
There you go. Mark Steiner, you've seen a few elections. Where's this one 40 days out?
Just a few.
Where's this one 40 days out?
It's really hard to say. All I can say is that I am, along with my other friends, phone banking, working Pennsylvania. With everything we can to make sure that state is not a Trump state, and I think that's this. It's too many variables. I think Biden's on the way. Biden has the upper hand, but too many variables.
Mark, if Biden wins Pennsylvania, he wins this election.
Yes, I agree.
Yes, he does.
Can I say for the record, because I know she's going to listen to this, my kid can vote in Pennsylvania. I'm beyond thrilled about that. And my brother and sister-in-law also do. So 3 votes for Biden.
So does Luke Jones and his family. My
There
partner
you-
Luke lives in
there
Shrewsbury.
you go.
Now,
Damien
you guys have
O'Doherty.
activated the wrong guy with the signal that goes into Southern York County. Trust me, they will hate me in Shrewsbury and Stewartstown before this is all over. Damien, can I be the negative guy on Baltimore Positive? And I want you to be the voice of reason here to tell me that the election won't be stolen and Trump won't have the military circling the White House and we won't have some Turkmenistan thing out of some rage movie. I really do have some greater fear about anarchy in the end of this because, Donald Trump's a criminal. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind about that. There's no doubt in my mind that the criminal activity that he's been a part of, and I see Manafort, Stone, just down the line, and all the people that have enabled him, every Kellyanne Conway, every Stephen Miller, all of these people will find themselves in some relative state of despair if they're not getting pardoned on the way out. I'm very, very concerned about democracy, more so than who wins Pennsylvania, because I don't think Donald Trump cares who wins Pennsylvania. He's going to say it's him, and that's really worked well for him for 70 some odd years. I don't understand it, Damien.
Well, look, I mean, this has been the most stable presidential race in modern times, in about 8 or 9 points through the whole time. And that may be why Biden was at the tip of Trump's tongue since the moment he's been elected, because he knew he was the most durable standard bearer from a brand standpoint, didn't really have much negatives. People still need to know a lot about him. But we don't know about these state-by-state polls. Last time they were a little faulty. So I think you got to keep an eye out for that. And then, look, I think you have to consider Democratic leaders have to consider not only every judicial option to be on the table in all these states. The Republicans will be there doing the same thing, but I think they need to think about extrajudicial approaches, which would be, briefings of military leaders, briefings of civil rights leaders, briefings of people that are what we would call in today's world the influencer community, and brief them on what they can do after Election Day if we have the tumult we all expect. I think that would be a grand investment of your time, Nestor, to focus on those hours. And then I would just ask if it's all right with Don, Mark, you saw 1968 happen. You were there. My dad was a freshman at Boulder University, Boulder College out there in Colorado in 68. He was graduated with Don, who was also, what's different about 68 and today? What's similar? Love to hear your thoughts on that before we check out.
Well, that's a whole nother conversation.
and Mark, and Mark, also, I want to say, this election is for Edwin Johnson, right? I mean, this is your long time friend that, basically the two of you helped integrate Baltimore. He was a city council person. I can imagine he had nothing more on his mind than registering his vote on this election. And so I just love to hear your thoughts on that.
I'll go back. I'll make it very quick because it's late. I mean, I think that this has more to do with 1868 than it does 1968.
Roger.
And I think that's really true. I think we are in a. I mean, 1968 was, a bunch of us made a mistake that Don would lash out at. Vote with your feet in 68. Don't go to the polls, and we saw what happened in 1968. I think that this election is critical as that, but it really this is critical.
That's pretty instructive, right? That's pretty simple and instructive, right there.
I mean, we can't let them take it away. We can't let them take everything that so many people from the 30s to the 60s and 70s fought for be taken away.
Well, I appreciate you all coming together here. Mark Steiner, Tom Cole, Candace Dodson-Reed, Ryan Miner, Damian O'Doherty, and, of course, my partner, Don Moe. Don, nobody asked you to give a parting shot, or is that what the rest of Baltimore Posit is for? You don't have anything for us here? You're muted, by the way, Don, so when you put your mic on, we'll be good with you then. How about that? There we go.
As I said, I started off the roundup. I have the race at 284 Biden, 254 Trump. I think it comes down to two states, Pennsylvania and Florida. I would ask everybody to get involved. My other plea, as I said earlier, as soon as you get the absentee ballot, fill it in that day, in the post box that day, or in the drop box. The drop boxes have 24/7 security. Whatever the president tells you is incorrect. Early in October, they're being picked up once a day. From the middle of October until Election Day, they're going to be picked up twice a day. Vote. Make this election matter. There are no undecided voters left. It just comes down to whether you believe in Mark Steiner's view and Candace Dodson-Reed's view of America, which are crystal clear, or whether you believe in this Darth Vader version of democracy that we're being served every single day. So, Nestor, I don't know about you, but I've enjoyed ElectionPalooza2.
ElectionPalooza2 will set up ElectionPalooza3 coming your way in a couple of weeks. I want to thank our entire cast here. We'll get Lucinda Ware in next time. I know we've had some other folks. Ted Venetoulis is going to join us at some point. We're doing all sorts of things. I'm going to be honoring my teachers over the next month by having many of my teachers onto the Zoom and onto Baltimore Positive. I think a lot of you know we are about to merge my 23-year sports brand at WNST with all the things we've done at Baltimore Positive. All of our guests will have home places on the new BaltimorePositive.com. All of it's brought to you by our friends at Taharka. I got the caramel crunch here made in Baltimore and serving up the social change. We'll be talking more to the Taharka friends of ours while our mouths are full with the caramel crunch or key lime pie ice cream. Also, our friends at State Fair and El Guapo in Catonsville. We're getting El Guapo open. I cannot wait to have my first margarita over there. A little silver tequila. Make my wife drive me home. I might have two on the way home before we do that. Over at State Fair as well with the shrimp and grits and the chicken and waffles. I got to get over there for breakfast as well. Fadley's. I owe Damie a segment here. We talk so much about crab cakes and crabs and shipping and all that good stuff. I don't want any of that to go away now that the weather's changed a little bit. We got to take care of our sponsors and take care of our friends. And that includes Moeller and Gary Realty. If you're buying, selling in the market, just want to learn a little bit, Jeff Moeller's always there for you with the mask on, 6 feet away. He'll Zoom with you, chat with you, call you. You can find him at Moeller and Gary. On behalf of former Baltimore County Executive Don Moeller, I am Nestor Aparicio. Big thanks to Mark Steiner, the entire team of Candace Dodson-Reed, Tom Cole, Damien O'Doherty, and Ryan Miner. Ryan in a minor detailed podcast. We're all podcasting here. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore, reminding you, vote. Just vote. We are Baltimore Positive.